that's more aligned in the notion of rewilding. We will, it's a knowledge exchange. So this is why we're representative in these different groups and locations. There will be an initial knowledge exchange. This is part of what this webinar is about today. Then we will have a mobility, and those of you who are part of the Bosch Alumni Network hopefully will join us in Sicily in September. We will have support from the Semistas, an expert organization in Spain on wild seeds, and we will do some tryout of gatherings of seeds and seedings. And for all of you, we will produce, of course, great communication material and hopefully interesting how-tos. And yeah, we would love to start this conversation, hopefully keep it going for a while and learn about the experiences in your local communities. And I think that's all from the introduction side, and the housekeeping. We'll keep it a little bit in easy. And just a little note for those of you maybe who arrived later, would you please mute your microphone so we don't have any disturbances in between. And from that, I'll give it away to Agatha.
Thank you very much, Anna. So I would like to do a little survey now. So the question is, how much do you know about seeds? Can you go to menti.com and digit this code, or just use the QR code? And then I will actually change the presentation. Just go and answer to the survey. Nice. So looks like everyone has some knowledge. Very cool. So yes, I think we will try to make this presentation accessible. I hope to a wide range of knowledge. Ah, nice. Someone is also pro seeds. Very, very cool. More. Nice, nice. Okay. So let's go back. So let's start from the beginning. Very simple. What is a seed? So seed is basically the result of plant reproduction, right? So what a bee is doing on a flower is part of what a seed is, right? Because it's starting the process of plant reproduction with pollination. So the pollen grain is going on top of the stigma, so the female organ of the flower, and the pollen is then traveling down through the pollen tubes to the ovule, which is usually found in the ovary, so on the bottom of the flower. So the sperm nuclei of the pollen fertilize the ovule and create two things. One is the zygote, so the first cell of a new plant, and then the so-called endosperm nucleus. But we will come back to this one, so bear with me. So in this specific case that we see here, in this flower, we have both female and male organs. So it's an hermaphrodite flower. But reproduction is not always so simple in plants. So in a flower, we do not always find both female and male organs. Reproduction can be different for every plant species. So it might need multiple flowers and sometimes even multiple individuals of plants. So that's the case, for example, for an asparagus or a carob, a kiwi. These plants, so you need two plants, a female individual and a male individual, in order to reproduce the plants. So seeds come in all sorts of different shapes. They are, sorry. Yeah. I missed this one. Yes. So here in this one, you can see that we have the anthers with the pollen, but we don't, and we also have the stigma. And in some other cases, we only have the pollen and the anther, and sometimes we only have the stigma. In this case, we have two different flowers with female and male organ. And the example is the asparagus. All right, so what is a seed? What is it made of? So to understand this, we have to think how is it formed, right? So the zygote is transforming itself into an embryo. So a small, tiny little plant inside the seed. And then this is surrounded by the endosperm. So that other part that was formed from fertilization. The endosperm is basically just starch, proteins, and oils. It's food that the plant is, that the embryo is using to grow. Because if you think that every plant begins its life as a seed, but seed cannot photosynthesize, they cannot produce their own food. So this food is carried, like the food of the embryo is carried around in the seed. And it's a storage of basically energy and life. The outside of the seed then is called coat, seed coat. So it surrounds the embryo and it makes sure that it's protected from weather, cold weather, hot weather, and parasites and other disturbances. But each seed is still different in the kind of embryo, endosperm, and coat it has. And also there are many different ways in which seeds are traveling around the world. This is seed dispersal. The way that seeds are traveling. So there are a lot of different ways. Seeds can be dispersed by animals that eat them and then excrete them in another location. That's called endozoochory, and that's the case of this jay. In fact, the Latin name of the jay is Garrulus glandarius, and it means literally the producer of acorns, because one single jay can bury about 1,000 acorns per year. Then we have seeds that can be transported on the outside of vertebrate animals, mostly mammals. And this process is called epizoochory. These seeds have some adaptation like adhesive mucus or hooked spines that attach them to the animal's skin or fur. And we have, for example, carrot seeds, celery seeds that are like this, but also, for example, Gallium aparine, this plant that, in fact, not just the seed, but all the plants behave like Velcro. So it has hooked hair which cling to animal fur. Then seed can be dispersed also through wind, thanks to their lightweight and shape. And this is anemochory. Then we have seed that can be dispersed through water, so hydrochory. And even we have a very quite crazy type of dispersal that is called ballochory. And this basically a type where seeds are ejected with explosive opening of the fruit. And this is the case for this plant. So this is one example of ballochory. I also have other examples, like in this case, it's a sweet pea pod explosion. So yeah, there are really many different types. And while the seed travels around the world, the embryo is safely stored inside the coat and is waiting for the perfect time to begin to grow, so to begin to germinate. Sorry. Yes. So there are many different ways in which seeds germinate. So seeds need the right condition to germinate, but these conditions are different for every seed. So Some seeds needs light, some needs darkness, but all of them needs water, oxygen, and a specific temperature. When conditions are right, the seeds can start taking in water, so they get bigger and bigger until they break the coat, and the air can get in. So we have oxygen that is entering in the seed, and the baby plant, so the embryo, is using the oxygen to burn the food. It's literally using oxygen to respire, to do respiration. And this is a metabolic reactivation that produces energy, and the baby plant is using it to grow. So from the embryo, the first part to grow out of the seed is the radical, usually the small root, and it's growing downward. Then the baby stem is beginning to curl upward later. So the seedling pushes out of the soil and starts sprouting leaves that reach the sunlight. So at this point, it stops using the reserves that it contains inside the seeds, inside the endosperm, because it's probably also exhausted at this point, and start photosynthesizing. So at this point, from the time that it starts photosynthesis, it needs continued supply of nutrients, light, and also water. So the soil seed bank. Seeds are usually stored in the soil before germination. So the soil seed bank is a natural storage of seeds, often dormant in the soil. And this mechanism allows seeds to be stored until there are more favorable conditions for their germination. This seed storage in soil occurs especially in our ecosystem, so in warm ecosystem. It's very important in the Mediterranean, this kind of mechanism. But it's so crucial because before we said, right, that we have seed dispersal, and we were meaning dispersal across space. A soil seed bank is just a seed dispersal through time. So soil seed banks serve as a repository for seeds of future generations of plants and enable the survival of these plant species, because seed banks act as a buffer for plant communities during periods of environmental variability and stress. So given the variety of stresses that we have in our ecosystems, or that we are experiencing, like wildfire, drought, and other disturbances, a biodiverse seed bank is very crucial, has a key role for the survival of many wild plants, because it ensures the long-term resilience of the ecosystem, because the more diverse the seed bank is, so the seeds in the soil are, the more probable it is that in certain conditions, specific conditions, any of those seeds will germinate, even after disturbance. All right. So we say that many wild seeds in the soil seed bank are often dormant before germination. But what is dormancy? Dormancy is an evolutionary adaptation that prevents seeds from germinating during unsuitable ecological conditions, conditions that could lead to a low probability of survival for the seedling. So seed dormancy occurs in more than 50% of wild plant species, and this is very beneficial for seed survival in ecosystems that are in good health, where optimal conditions for breaking the dormancy and germination will occur with more probability, and also probably for longer periods. But seed dormancy can limit plant recruitment, so plant growth, in restoration context, where optimal conditions for these seeds to break the dormancy might not occur very often. And the seeds are so easily eaten or taken away by soil erosion. So it's very important to consider dormancy in restoration planning, because if we do not consider and understand dormancy, we will probably face failure of plant establishment. So when we want to use seeds for restoration, first we have to distinguish a dormant seed from a non-dormant seed. So non-dormancy is when the seed is absorbing the water and germinating fast. So within 4 weeks after the collection, and over a wide range of environmental conditions. So all the range of conditions that is possible for that species. So it's a fast germination. It doesn't need any kind of treatment for breaking the dormancy. Then within dormant seeds, we need to distinguish different types of dormancy, because we need to distinguish, for example, physical dormancy. So sometimes seeds or fruit coat, so the external part, is causing the dormancy because it's impermeable. So it's not allowing water to enter the seed. This is the physical dormancy. An example of this is carob seeds. Then we have a case of morphological dormancy. In this case, and this is the case, so in the embryo, which is not fully developed inside the seed, needs time to develop. So the embryos are underdeveloped and they require time before germination. So this example is Clematis vidalba. It's quite present in our ecosystems as well. And it produces seeds with very small embryo of less than 1 millimeter in length. And then the same embryo is growing up to 5 millimeters before the radicle emerges. So in this case, we just have to wait, basically, that the seeds develops. And then sometimes we have also physiological dormancy. So we have seeds that imbibe water, so they absorb water. They also have fully developed embryos, but they have a low growth potential. And then we have also combinations of this type of dormancy. So we have morphophysiological and combinational, so physical and physiological. So why do we need to distinguish these types of dormancy? Well, we need to distinguish which dormancy a specific plant species has, because depending on the type of seed dormancy, we have different treatments to alleviate dormancy. This is called priming of seed. So we can allow the seed to germinate soon when we sow it with these treatments. But if seed dormancy type is not well identified, we cannot apply the correct treatment to alleviate this dormancy. So applying the wrong treatment can at best result in failure to break the dormancy, but at worst, it will kill the seeds. So for example, physical dormancy, so an impermeable seed coat, like carob, can be alleviated by scarification, which is basically intentionally damaging the coat of the seed to allow water to enter. Or it can be done with dry and wet heat, for example, so putting the seeds in hot air or hot water. But these methods are very unuseful for alleviating a morphological dormancy. So the clematis seeds, they just need to develop. We have to wait for the time that is required for the embryo to develop inside the seed. We cannot do any kind of treatment to break dormancy. And also scarification and heat are also not useful at all for the physiological dormancy. So in this case, in fact, there are other treatments like warm or cold certification, so putting the seeds in moist, warm or cold environments, and wet and dry cycling or drying after ripening. So this is a bit what dormancy looks like. I will pass the word to Sara.
Thank you. Sorry for this shift in perspective. So thank you, Agatha, for this introduction on the biology of seeds. And hopefully now those of you that only had some information, maybe will have learned something new. And you will be able to follow the next section of this webinar that's all on wild seeds for restoration. So what can be the role of wild seeds in restoration? So first of all, I know it might be obvious, and actually Agatha has talked about all of these things during her presentation, but sometimes it's useful even to look at what's obvious and put it all together. And here you can see what's the cycle of natural regeneration. So how do ecosystems either keep themselves in balance, or how do ecosystems regenerate themselves after a natural disturbance that might be minor or massive? we're talking fires, we're talking droughts, for example, as well. The cycle of natural regeneration, as Agatha has explained, telling to you the story of the seed, basically, starts with flowering and pollination, and then it comes fruiting, and then after fruiting, dispersal. And then we have the soil seed bank that stores the seeds for us in the ecosystems, allowing the ecosystem, for example, to regenerate after disturbance such as fire that could eliminate the whole vegetational cover. And after that, it's also interesting to think about how nature has thought of all of the processes that Agatha has just told us about, for example, priming. A lot of seeds are primed in nature by, for example, changes in temperatures, or some seeds, for example, need to pass through the stomach of animals to be in contact with acids that will break their dormancy. And then after they're expelled, they will be allowed to germinate. And so then germination starts, and you have new plants that can either replace old plants in ecosystems that just need to be kept in balance in the shape they already are, or new plants that can colonize an ecosystem and start the vegetational succession after a disturbance. What can go wrong here, and why are we talking about restoration? So of course, there can be many different reasons why we need restoration, why this process can break, this cycle can break. And it could be natural or not. Think about all of the anthropic, human-driven disturbances, for example, unlogic use of resources, or human-caused wildfires. Sometimes the cycle of regeneration can also be broken by, for example, a disequilibrium in the ecosystem. Think about an ecosystem where there are not apex predators. What will happen is that, for example, rodents that really like seeds will be present in a surplus in the ecosystem, and so they might eat too many seeds. Or, for example, herbivores could put too much pressures on new seedlings. And these are so examples of natural and human-driven disturbances to this cycle of regeneration. Luckily, we also have artificial regeneration that can come in handy. And there's mainly two ways to reconnect to the natural regeneration cycle. So we have two different main kinds of artificial regeneration. The first one, and currently most used one, is this one, which is artificial regeneration through planting. So what happens here is seeds are collected or produced, but mainly collected in the wild, and then they will be used to create new plants in nurseries, and then these trees will be planted. I think this is what we are all quite familiar with when we talk about forest restoration, for example. But there's actually another method, and that's what we will discuss today, and hopefully introduce and share something interesting with you today. And that's the second one, which is sowing or direct seeding. So the main difference, of course, is that the first one, so artificial regeneration through planting, intersects with the natural regeneration cycle at the very end of the cycle. So you have already grown plants that are put in the soil, while direct seeding, intersects with the natural regeneration cycles a bit ahead. When you have when the seed is ready, maybe it's been treated. So we have done priming, for example, artificially, but then we leave the seed and the natural regeneration cycle to do its magic. And we leave the plant to germinate and start its growing in its life cycle in nature, already in nature, in the ecosystem where it will inhabit. I'm sorry. So about direct seeding, since it's something not everyone might be familiar with, I wanted to add some specifics about it. So it's a method, as it was as it's maybe obvious, that requires collecting the seeds and directly sowing them in the soil. So there's no, let's say, nursery phase to this method. And there's some pros to direct seeding that make it quite appealing to those of us that work in restoration. First of all, it is cost and effort effective, especially when we compare it to planting as a restoration method. Indeed, it's estimated that the cost of direct seeding is 3 times lower than that of planting. That's quite clear because you need less workforce. You don't need people to take care of the seeds and planting and seedlings and then the small plants. And you also need less people planting the plants. And there's also less cost because of resources that are needed. Think of all the resources needed to take care of these these seeds that have to germinate and then grow in nurseries. Another quite interesting thing, and that's quite interesting, especially through the lenses of rewilding, is that direct seeding mimics natural processes. As I've shown you before, it's a method of restoration that intersects the natural cycle of regeneration at the very beginning of the life of the, let's say, new generation of the ecosystem. And this has some implications that are really interesting. For example, root development. Not everyone might know that, for example, an acorn, before even growing its first leaf, will develop in the soil, so in nature, it's in its natural environment, at least 40 centimeters of taproot. The taproot is the central root from which all the branches, the root branches, will develop from later on, depending on the plant type. And it's the part of the root that digs deep into the soil and goes hunting for those nutrients and water, of course, that the seedling will need once the seed has germinated. If we think that an acorn needs at least 40 centimeters of taproot just to grow its first leaf, we can also imagine what are the consequences for a plant of growing inside a container that limits this growth. Especially in containers, the taproot growth is limited, and the root branches growth is easier for the plant. This is especially important in Mediterranean context for Mediterranean species. Think about a young seedling that is planted in an ecosystem that can be subjected to droughts or where water is not easily accessible to plants. This small plant will have a root system that it's not, we don't know if it's, it could not be ready to go hunt for all those nutrients and water, or at least it could be more stressing for the plant. Whilst in nature, the plant will have time to develop this first taproot, and then in the first cycle of growth, the taproot is estimated to grow, I'm always referring to acorns here, to at least 100 centimeters. So that's quite a big root for a really small plant. And then something that I will not dive deep into, because luckily one of our partners will tell us more about it later, is seeding is actually intrinsic in human cultures. We've been sowing seeds for thousands of years, and although we're more familiar with seeds that we sow to eat plants, these can actually be made for ecosystem restoration now that it's needed more than ever. So after all of these really nice things about direct seedings, why are seeds not used much for restoration at the moment? What are the reasons for deterrence? Well, I will try to share with you what we have discovered during this first study phase and the picture that has been shown to us through this study. First of all, at the moment, we're actually lacking a dedicated supply chain. And here I wanted to show you what a supply chain for native seeds could look like. You would have an ecosystem that needs restoration, And instead of directly going for plants that have been growing in nurseries, you would resort to seeds. You can either collect the seeds in the wild, or you could have produced these seeds, but I will tell you more about this later, because there's something to keep in mind here. And then these seeds will need to be processed, will need to be tested, will need to be tested for dormancy, and dormancy breaking treatments will need to be applied, so priming. And the seeds might even need enhancing in lab to be sure that they will be able to germinate once sown. After that, the site will be prepared, and then there will be monitoring, and hopefully the ecosystem will be restored. This is what a supply chain would look like for seeds, for native seeds. What I mean when I say that a dedicated supply chain is missing here, I mean that at the moment, most of the legislation, and I would say most of the attention is on crop seeds. So, for example, for quality testing, you would need some protocols. And these protocols are usually given by the law or by international entities. But most of the times, they just account for the biology of crop seeds, so the seeds that produce most of the plants that we use for eating. And that's where the problem begins, because there's a lot of differences between crop seeds and native seeds. And here I will, after Agatha's explanation actually is quite, it can be quite obvious why native seeds are a bit trickier to work with, but I will try to sum it up for you. First of all, we have produced crop seeds for thousands of years, mainly keeping in mind genetic homogeneity. This has actually some problems itself, and the reason for this is, on one hand, reliability of production, and on the other hand, for sure, there's profit. But this is a given. Genetic homogeneity is something that we have selected plants for. In native seeds, however, genetic diversity is especially important. Inside a single species, there's a great genetic diversity between its individuals, because every single individual of a wild plant is actually the result of an adaptive process that has been going on for generations. So every single plant is adapted to the actual exact place where it's grown and where the seeds have been produced and where it's germinated, and so on through the generations. And genetic diversity is something that we need to account for when we're talking wild seeds. As I was saying before, there's also an option in the, I will quickly go back, in the supply chain to produce seeds. So, for example, to have wood entirely planted and dedicated to seed production. However, to account for this genetic diversity that's especially important for wild plants, we couldn't produce seeds from the same plants for more than 5 generations, because after that we would be selecting them, kind of like we've done with cultivated plants, right? Then Agatha has explained dormancy. And dormancy is something we have selected out of crop seeds during these thousands of years, because it's obviously easy to work with seeds that do not need priming. On the other hand, native seeds are adapted to a lot of different environmental conditions, and dormancy is something we need to account for. And also, there's something really important. There's conservation. Storing. So crop seeds are, in the majority of cases, orthodox. That means there are seeds that do not mind to be dried and stored dried. On the other hand, native seeds, for example, oaks, are most of the times recalcitrant, or at least they can be both orthodox or recalcitrant. Where recalcitrant means that a seed cannot be stored dry. If you try to store acorns, for example, for even a not so long time, let's say in a drawer after drying them, they will for sure die, because they need a certain amount of humidity to be kept inside them to be able to germinate. They cannot be dried. And that's something that makes, especially when we're talking big quantities, that's what we need for restoration, right? It makes it harder, it makes it trickier. And there's one thing that's crucial, that's the knowledge gap. For crop seeds, we know a lot. Think about corn or think about tomatoes. We know a lot about crop seeds. That's not the same for native seeds. There's a big knowledge gap in all of these characteristics that are species specific. So every single plant has their own. And the knowledge gap is both for the characteristic of the species and also actually for the difference between planting and direct seeding. There's a big research gap in this field. And that's especially true when we're talking about endemisms. Think about a species that it's only found in one place. If we already have knowledge gap about native seeds that are shared across different countries, think about what happens when we have an endemism. So how can we fill the knowledge gap? That's exactly what this project is about. We are not a lab, we are not a research center, but we want to start doing, we want to start trying, and we want to bring people together so that we can share experiences and start sharing practices that will maybe make more feasible the use of wild seeds in restoration. That's why in this webinar, from now on, we will give space to our band partners to tell us about their experience, to tell us about the story of their organization, and we will then have some time for questions if there's any. So I will pass it on to, I think, Pau and Guillem from Conecta Natura.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. It was very nice. So good evening, everyone. My name is Pau, and I'm a technician at Conecta Natura. First of all, I want to ask you all to excuse me because my English is a little bit rusty, so I'm a bit out of practice, but I will do my best to make everything clear today. Otherwise, you can ask when I finish the presentation. And I guess I have to ask you to move the slides when I need. Okay. So Conecta Natura is a non-profit organization and is based in Castellon. Castellon is located in the north of the Valencian region in the southeast of Spain. You can see it in the map. And we mainly work at the intersection of agroecology and landscape restoration to build resilience in our rural territories. So you can pass the next slide, please. Thank you. So our mission is based mainly on three pillars. First, to facilitate the transition towards sustainable and socially equitable land management models. Second, to restore and preserve the biological and cultural heritage of rural areas in Castellon. And finally, promoting this heritage as a real driver for socio-economic development, using local heritage and local resources for rural development. So to achieve this, our approach is to use a very practical approach. So we signed land stewardship agreements with private local landowners in order to manage lands that have ecosystemic or social interest for us. We also use participatory action research techniques to involve the local community in the co-creation of knowledge and to engage them in the recovery and preservation of the local heritage. And we develop a lot of training and outreach activities because we truly believe that the local community is the heart of any long-term restoration that we want to develop in the landscape. So they are the ones which are going to maintain these activities we do once the project and the money is over. So next slide, please. Thank you. So I think that for you to understand our work, it's important you understand our context. So I have to talk you, maybe you know it because some of you are from Mediterranean region, but in the south northeast of Spain and also in other regions of Mediterranean, we have this traditional system which we called agroforestry mosaic. So this is a complex system that it's a methodology to understand or a framework to understand the landscape. So according to this, we divide the landscape into 4 major categories. First, we have the rural settlements, so villages and also farmsteads, which are like isolated houses in the middle of the landscape. And usually these settlements are surrounded by traditional irrigated gardens. So away from the settlements, there are rain-fed crops like cereals, legumes, olives, vineyards, or fruit trees that combine with forest and shrublands. So this is a system, a really complex system, as you can see in the pictures. Like the first one is a really old picture, but like made it color with modern techniques, and the second one is like nowadays picture. But you can see the difference in the textures and colors and uses of the landscape in these 2 pictures. So as I was saying, this is a system created by centuries of human nature interactions that comes from so long, and it's really old and is providing us multiple uses and ecosystem services. Next slide, please. But unfortunately, nowadays we are facing a crisis, and this crisis is that this landscape is getting degraded, and there is an ongoing homogenization process. So as you can see in the photos here, mainly what is happening is that the abandonment of the farming and traditional land uses has led to forest encroachment. So the forest is growing uncontrolled over the old fields. So there is like the humans come there and take out the natural vegetations, and suddenly in a few years they disappear and they stop like managing the ecosystem. So all the like opportunist species start to grow, but like really, really fast, like a cancer growing, you know. So we have a really dense white pine forest that you can see in the second photo, like really young and thin forest, really large. So when a fire occurs in this forest, it's impossible to stop. And then also we have like degraded areas when we have bushes and small weeds that but are not are really homogeneous. So yeah, this make, as I was saying, the landscape like really homogeneous, and this is causing a loss of natural and cultural heritage. And most dangerously, it is increasing the vulnerability of the landscape towards wildfires and climate change disturbances. So to deal with this crisis of homogenization of the landscape, we work both from an agrobiodiversity or agroecological approach and with a forest restoration approach. So I will show you as I will show you in the following slides. Thank you. We focus part of our work on the recovery of traditional crop varieties or land races. So we are devoted from the last 8 years to catalog and preserve multiple land races of seeds and fruit trees. And we believe that they are really powerful tools for social civic engagement and for stopping and promoting to stop the land abandonment. So it's easier that people maybe make an effort to crop the fields. If they are cropping something, they feel like emotionally attached to, because these seeds or trees comes with the whole history of the family and so on. So yeah, we have a tree nursery through fruit tree collections and also a seed bank. And we work on this on a really like participatory approach. So what we do is that we multiply and distribute these land races to both professional and non-professional farmers in order to promote the maintenance and recovery of agricultural lands. So what we want to do with this is, on the one hand, enhancing the local food sovereignty, and on the other hand, to prevent the abandonment of the agricultural lands that become, so to prevent the forest colonization. So there you can make a photo, or maybe later when they pass the presentation, you can check the two catalogs that we have made so far. Yeah, and you have these pictures about the our work, basically. So if you can go to the next slide, please. We think this is really important regarding to landscape preservation and regarding to the topic of this project, because when we keep agriculture in our landscapes, what we get is, for instance, by preserving traditional irrigated gardens in the forest-urban interfaces, we are creating a vital green buffer zone that helps to prevent the wildfires to reach the villages. And on the other hand, the rain-fed orchards that people plant away or carry out away from the villages that are like distributed like randomly in the territory are very important for the landscape and the ecosystem, because they act as the diversity islands, you know. So we tend to see like a forest is like the most natural and diverse thing you can get, but it's proof that sometimes we have more diversity in a farmer land, which is agroecology, has an agroecological management. Yeah, and apart from being diversity islands, these orchards also break the continuity of the forest cover. So as you can see in the picture, it reduces the spread of wildfires, and also it serves as shelters for local floral fauna. So imagine this is a small plot of olive trees that is has an agroecological management, and it was surrounded by pines. So a huge fire came, a really fast fire, and it passed away. And you can see that there is still life there, no? So there is the fauna maybe could survive there, and also the flora, and afterwards disseminate from this point. Next slide, please. And related with this, I just mentioned, with this like diversity islands or hubs, it comes like our forest restoration approach. We are using here, we call it núcleos de dispersión y reclamo, which will be like seed dispersal hubs. I don't know the exact translation, but more or less. So what we do is to apply nature-based solutions for forest restoration and rediversification. We haven't worked as yet directly with the seeds, but this is like an in-between step that we are making. So what we do is to choose a spot in the forest that are accessible for initial irrigation and monitoring, in order to ensure a high survival rate during the first critical years, because as they mentioned before in the presentations, usually like the survival rate of plantations is really low. So what we do is to plant in a spot that we know that we can take really good care of these trees and wait for these trees to grow up. So these trees are the ones that are producing fruits that are being disseminated and distributed. And we used to seek a place which is elevated to ensure a better propagation for future seeds. And what we plant on these spots is a mix between native forest species and fruit trees that have been naturalized because they have been for so long in the ecosystem. So when these trees reach maturity, they produce fruits that, on the one hand, they serve as food for fauna, which is really important because they mainly have pine cones to eat. And also these fruits serve for dissemination. So then we have these trees, and we have natural dissemination processes that are driven by gravity, because seeds naturally fall down slope, and by fauna, because birds and mammals feeds on these hubs and then disperse the seeds across the landscape. So in order to facilitate this regeneration process, what we do is to mimic like natural disturbances, like small clearings in the forest downhill, downhill of this hub. So we are creating like a small windows of opportunity where these new seeds can successfully take root and grow. And then like it's a really like a slow process, but it's like more economical and ecological and safer process. So in conclusion, through restoration of agricultural activity and forest diversification, we aim to reverse the landscape homogenization that we are facing nowadays. And we want to transform this landscape back into a balanced and resilient mosaic. So this is what we are trying to. Thank you very much for your attention. And I have finished, and now I will pass the floor to the next speaker.
I think the next speaker is Giuseppe.
Oh, yes. Hello, everyone again. Giuseppe Scandone here from the Puglia region. Agata, Sara, and Paul will do a great presentation, so I was the lazy one with just one slide. I will be very short, but just because I think in my case it's important to acknowledge the importance of Puglia, and the title is really about that. In Puglia there is a landscape that is disappearing, and it's the old olive orchard landscape. And the new is unfolding, but the new is, again, a monoculture of olive, a monoculture of vineyards. So the natural landscape in Puglia it was in danger. It's still more in danger now. So that's why I joined the project, because I think it's very important to think about the natural landscape in Puglia. So if you took a picture of Puglia 20 years ago, it was a very green land of olive orchards in all the region. And right now you can see in the pictures, most of the old olive trees are dying because of a bacterial disease that is called Xylella fastidiosa. And I mean, the bacteria was the worst, but it's not the only factor in the dying of this landscape, because it was a monoculture. There was climate change on Puglia that is beating hard. And there's also a culture of managing the soil that is very hard, like hard plowing, right? Fertilizers. And so I think it's a very good lab to work with this project in my region. And also because it's still one of the hotspots of biodiversity in Europe, with more than 1,000 species of vascular flora. We have one of the most diverse agrobiodiversity. And on that side, I will join the conversation that Sara was talking about before. We have a lot of knowledge. We have a lot of university projects on food crops, ancient varieties. On the other side, on the native plants, we have very few. So I think that the material for restoration in Puglia is high. There is a lot of work to do, and I hope we can start the conversation from this project on. And I just wanted to quote the very important national plan restoration that is coming in the next years. So Italy joined the EU directive of the NPR, of this national plan of restoration. It's like the municipalities will be obliged to follow the national plan for restoration. So we are in the good way. So maybe we can have, in the future, there will be more money and more effort and more work to do on national restoration. So I will keep it very short, and I think my observation, I have a lot of questions on the other presentation, so I'll just do that. And yeah, just to tell you a little bit by myself, but just a short line, I'm an environmental scientist and a science teacher in a high school, and an EU consultant for projects, Erasmus Plus mainly. And thank you so much again for the presentation. And yeah, if you have any question on Puglia,
Thank you, Giuseppe. Okay, let's go with Evangelia's presentation, and then we will have time for questions.
Okay, hello everyone. I'm Evangelia from Peripatos Sociocultural Enterprise based in Attica region in Greece. Thank you all for your detailed presentations, not you, Giuseppe. Especially for me, a non-biologist, non-environmentalist, all these technical details are fascinating. However, I approach this topic from a completely different perspective, from the sociocultural. And one might wonder, what does the sociocultural field have to contribute to what seems like a purely scientific object? Very quick, I will show you why seeds, apart from being the biological answer, are also the proper social answer to our problem. Next slide, please. Thank you. Let me first outline the context. As I told you, I'm from Attica, and in particular from one of the three mountains here. Athens, the capital, hosts more than 40% of the Greek population, and the three surrounding mountains, Parnitha, Imitos, and the one we are based, Penteli, provide the absolute necessary and vital essence for the capital and the approximately 4 million people that live here. All three mountains are characterized by the so-called peri-urban forests, are directly in contact and affected by people, and unfortunately have experienced many fires, mega fires, wildfires during the past years. Next slide, please. With most of the band members that we are here, this is not our first collaboration. And in one prior phase of this evolving collaboration, we conducted a thorough preliminary and secondary research looking deep into the wounds of Pedeli. Briefly, the findings, at least 14 wildfires only at Pedeli. I'm not counting the other two mountains, and many more of lower intents in the past 40 years. The mountain is burning so often that nature's clock has broken. It simply doesn't have the time or energy to heal itself anymore. And this is not the most striking, the scientific finding is not the most striking, it's the social. Because we are witnessing an evacuation culture. In Greece, the main governmental strategy has become a run for your life approach via mobile alerts. And this in turn creates a society that only knows how to flee away from the forest, not how to coexist with it. And all these end up to the emotional gap. People in Athens feel ecological grief. They see the mountain as a lost cause, a black background to their city, and they feel powerless to change it. They have become passive observers of a dying landscape. Next slide, please. And here is why wild seeds come as the ultimate social tool. If we just bring the ready-made plants, apart from all the scientific arguments you've already presented, people, we remain consumers of green. But when we talk about native wild seeds, then we talk about shared agency. When we collect seeds, it's an act of reclaiming the mountain. It's a way for the community to say, I'm part of it. And the dormancy we heard earlier, it's not only a biological state. Socially, our communities are also in dormancy. And it seems like we are waiting for a reason to sprout again. And moving to the third box, the knowledge exchange, unlike a top-down reforestation project, seed-based rewilding requires us to share local knowledge, like the examples from Spain. We need to share, to touch the soil and to wait. All these circumstances position human in a completely different mindset. And it's this slow culture approach to a fast burning problem that, for us at least, it might be the final and only solution anymore. Seeds are not just biological embryos. They are the vessels of memory and resilience. They are kind of the bridge that will take us from the culture of evacuation back to the culture of stewardship. And not only that, in order to sum everything from the Greek and the sociocultural perspective, rewilding isn't just about restoring ecosystem. It's about rewilding our mindsets. And it's the perfect set for us to move from grief to action, from evacuation to stewardship, and from being passive observers to be active seed guardians. It's not about just planting trees. It's about showing the future of the city. And closing this short presentation, if you want to see how this transition from theory to soil actually looks like, let's meet all in Sicily and find together if we are as resilient as the Mediterranean seeds. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Evangelia. Thank you, everyone, for your presentations. So now we can open the floor to questions, and yeah, any question is welcome.
Giuseppe, you had so many already listed. We know you wanted.
No, I don't want to start, it's like...
You could break the ice though.
Evangelia, I lost your last words because I was like offline for a... So I wanted to ask, no, I'm not joking, about the quantity of like social initiative on the mountains. Like there is a lot of people that is trying to do something for the mountain, or it's like just only the same people doing it?
No, that's the problem. They're always the same few people, because after so many wildfires, after living in a burnt background, the emotional gap, the emotional grief make them feel powerless and don't know where to start or what to do or how to act. So they are looking for opportunities to engage, but they don't know how. And there are some planting, events happening mainly by huge companies. I don't want to go deeper into this. A lot of people join, but it's like one Sunday morning event and that's it. There is no follow-up, there is no meaningful engagement. They're just working hands on the slopes of the mountain.
I mean, I can go on with the questions. Thank you, Evangelia. But I don't want to, stall the floor to anyone.
Yeah, but also for anyone else, please feel free to ask questions. I think we're a small enough group that you can just like unmute yourself and shoot about. And if you prefer, you can use the chat and we'll ask them. Giuseppe, I think the floor still is yours.
Okay, I'm not shy about questions, so I have a question for Pau. Pau, thank you so much for your presentation. I just wanted to ask about the forests, the pine forests in your region. Are they the native forests, or they are like coming from replanting in the 50s? Because I'm just saying this because in my region we have a lot of pine forests, like small one. But they all come from the 50s when they were planted again, because I don't know, there was some kind of policy back then.
So they are both. Like the white pine is naturally occurring in some places, and we also have during the dictatorship some like big plans for reforestation. Like they were thinking about autarky and living about own resources and just start to plant pines. And then when the dictatorship opens economically to exchange with other countries, they realized that it was like really cheap and no good quality wood, so they just abandoned the plantations. But it's not just about that, it's because also this pine was in their natural distribution zones. So when suddenly like agriculture lands get abandoned, like it was really sudden because of the war and because of the things that happened after the war. Like they were forcing people to leave some rural areas. It was so sudden, this gap of maintenance, that the pines start to climb and go from the sea to the mountains. And then we have these pines coming from the sea and the pines that going down from this big plantation. So like this white pine is dominating all the forests that weren't mature enough to face the expansion of this species.
I actually have a question, Pau, for this. Like, do you have any natural regeneration below the pines in any of those forests, like native forests? I mean,
maybe in some mid zones where this pine forest is touching with quercus forest, it's occurring, but I think it's too sun and the ecosystem is too degraded. So mainly we have the pines, and then we have the pine needles, which are acidified in the soil, and some bushes and some occurring down, but it's still too soon. I think like the ecosystem by itself may take too long to to make through all this cycle and generating enough biomass so the quercus species start to go up. So it's not really occurring like generally.
thank you very much. Anyone else? Don't be shy.
Then I would like to make an observation and would be interested in your thoughts on this. It's not an elaborate thought, it's just coming to me now with your presentations, especially on the sociocultural aspects. Because I think what many of these plantations that you, Pau, mentioned have in common, that they're connected to a certain political idea as well. Like, or it is under, with dictatorship in Italy, it's a lot connected with like post-war plantations. They all have in common these like big, on a drawing board, utopia plans that for sure also done with good intentions, no? To restore, for autonomy, etc. I mean, good intentions for this idea of their time. But I wonder if seeds offer, now in a time where we live without any big narratives, no? If they offer a humble approach that we don't really know what is best for nature or what.
like in the sense of rewilding, no? That we just take a step back and are a bit more humble with what we think is best, and just try to like give the inputs, and then let chaos unfold, or let nature unfold, and let it lead. And I wonder if seeds are the perfect representation of this approach, thought, and narrative. And yeah, I would be interested in your thoughts on that. We can take this also into a like more philosophical debate around wine in Sicily, but maybe as we're here now, I would be interested in your thoughts on that. You can also just leave it there.
No, I mean, for me, I'm a simple guy, you know. No, it's a very interesting question, but I don't know. I think I don't have the right words in English. No, I mean, it's a very deep conversation that we go through. So maybe, Pao, you have some answers on that.
Well, I think it would take like, we can talk about this for hours, but your what you say made me thought that really, like, on these reforestations, I thought there was a lot of violence and forced use, and no, you know, because it was like really hard work and mainly men working that and machinery. And I think sometimes when humans are capable of using machines and doing some things, they go too far. I mean, for instance, I was talking to a friend some days ago, and like we came to the idea that maybe the as far as we would go using machinery is like this really small, I don't know, like machines, you know, like the shovel, but the small ones, because if you start to use a bigger one, you can do really terrible things. So when it comes to seeds, I think when you were talking, like maybe if we would that in the past they do this with seeds, also children and women would be involved, and also not that strong people, maybe more sensitive people. So maybe different things occur, you know, because most of these plantations are just straight lines, and it's, for me, it's really violent to see these straight lines on nature. It makes no sense. So this is violence for me. So I guess when it comes to seeds, it can be more democratic because anyone can carry seeds in the pockets and put it. And yeah, for me, it's about to listen nature, to observe nature, and just you know, let it be and help it. Like I don't think like humans have to lead nothing, just follow and facilitate the things that are already occurring, so they can occur faster, or they can occur, you know, like if a little help to some process maybe, but just that.
Thank you. I think that will germinate with me for the next days for sure.
All right. It looks like
either we've
everyone
been
is
really clear or really confused.
Yes. Okay. So thank you, everyone. It was really nice. Yes, so we are soon opening a call for the BAN network. So if you would be interested into participating into this mobility to Sicily happening in September, you're welcome to apply, and we are waiting for you in Sicily. So thank you, everyone, very much. It was really nice to have you all here and to be able to start this knowledge exchange and start this adventure with seeds in the Mediterranean.
Yes, and if you're interested in following things outside of the mobility, feel free to reach out to the organizations that you probably saw the webinar on, and that's why you're here. We'll produce a couple of more outputs, and yeah, would like to keep the conversation going.
And then have a wonderful Thursday evening, everyone.
Yes, yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
So,
Bye.
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 Bye bye. Thank you.
Ciao, ciao.